prediction video for UFC Fight Night Rozenstruik versus Sakai. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Claudio Puedes versus Jordan Levitt. To me, I do think Jordan Levitt's the better wrestler, but I think Puedes is the better overall grappler. The striking, I think, is pretty close. To me, it's just how much better has Puedes got since his last fight, and I am leaning towards Puedes. I like him a lot. I think Jordan Levitt, people are high on him just because they've seen him fight recently. I think Puedes is really, really good. We just haven't seen him fight in a little bit. But he's still super young. He's only 25, so I think guys that young usually tend to get a lot better as they go. And because of that, I'm leaning towards Puedes. I think eventually this fight will hit the ground. I mean, Jordan Levitt doesn't even keep it on the feet that long, and I think if they're grappling on the ground, I lean towards Puedes. I think he's the better overall grappler, and I think he catches Jordan in a submission eventually. Next is Sean Woodson versus Yusuf Zalal. To me, I think that these guys are pretty similar. I think that Woodson, his biggest advantage is just that he throws way more volume. I think Zalal, if he could get it to the ground, I think he can win by submission. I just think Woodson's takedown defense is too good. I think Zalal doesn't have the type of wrestling that's really great at taking people down. Like, he can do it against okay grapplers, but not against guys with solid takedown defense. We saw in his last fight, he really couldn't take down the Korean guy at all. And I think the same thing is going to be in this fight. I think he's going to just get outpointed on the feet a bit. He's going to try to get takedowns, and he's not going to be able to. And I think Woodson's just going to outpoint him for 3 straight rounds and win a solid 30-27 decision. Next is Manon Fornat versus Tabitha Ricci. And to me, I think that Fornat is just a little too good. I think that she's the much better striker, and I think she'll be able to keep this on the feet. I think Tabitha's just decent everywhere, not great anywhere. But I think Fornat will keep it on the feet, outpoint her, and eventually win by either decision or late TKO. Next is Alan Patrick versus Mason Jones. To me, I think Mason Jones is just way better overall. I think that Alan, at this point, is pretty much just a wrestler jiu-jitsu guy. I think Jones can keep this on the feet and just kind of outpoint him for 3 rounds. I think Jones is a good enough grappler where even if he gets taken down, he can survive on the ground. And vice versa. If he's on top, I think he's a good enough grappler to keep it there and does beat up Patrick. Patrick hasn't looked super good as of late, and I think that, like I said, especially if it's on the feet, I just think Jones is going to outpoint him. And I think it will be on the feet for most of the fight, and I think Jones just wins a solid 30-27 decision. Next is Makwan Amirkhani versus Kamala Kirk. To me, these guys are both kind of grapplers with some striking. I would say Makwan's the better overall wrestler. He probably has the slightly better submission game. I think Kirk has got the slightly better hands. This is tough because I do think Amirkhani is probably the slightly better fighter overall, but I can't go against Kirk because he's from Hawaii. I just can't. Like, realistically, Amirkhani is probably going to win this fight, but I'm going to go with Kirk. I think that Kirk is a good enough grappler to maybe catch him in a submission, but if you're betting on this fight, bet on Amirkhani. But I'm going to go with Kirk. I say he wins by submission in the 2nd round. Next is Muslim Samalikov versus Francisco Trinaldo. And to me, the weirdest thing about this fight is I do think Muslim's the better overall striker. But the thing that people are not factoring in is the grappling. Muslim's been submitted a couple times in his career, and Trinaldo, when he needs to, he takes fights to the ground. And he's taking guys, even at lightweight, he was taking guys down who are bigger than him. And I think Muslim is one of those guys. I think that Trinaldo, yeah, on the feet, he'll probably get outstruck a little bit, but I think if he's smart, Trinaldo will wait for his time and get a takedown and probably win by sub, and that's what I think is going to happen. I think Trinaldo's top game is really solid. He has really good arm triangles and really good rear naked chokes. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's his game plan going into this fight, is just take his time, take him down, and submit him. And people forget, Trinaldo fought at middleweight, and he has wins by knockout submission against guys at middleweight. I know that was outside the UFC, but his UFC debut was at middleweight, and he won that fight. So he's not even, like, I know he is a small guy, but he's thick, he's muscular. And I do think that, like I said, the grappling advantage is pretty big in Trinaldo's favor. He just has to get it there, but I do think he will get it there, and once he does, I think he's going to win by submission. Next is Tanner Boser versus Ilir Latifi, and to me, my biggest thing is I just think Tanner Boser is the more overall, he's got a speed advantage in terms of the striking. I think that Ilir is really just explosion, but Tanner's got the better foot movement, and he throws the better volume. I think that Ilir has the wrestling advantage, but I think Boser's got the overall size advantage. I think he's the much more natural heavyweight. I think Bozer's one of those more like 230 heavyweights that's just athletic and can move around. As where Latifi, he's really small, and I think that his wrestling is good, but when you fight guys that much bigger than you, it really is going to show, you know, as the fight goes on. I think Illier's going to get tired, and I think Bozer is going to start to pick it up, and I think Bozer will get like a third round knockout. I think once Illier starts to slow down kind of a lot, I think we're going to see Bozer just start lighting him up. So I'm going to say Bozer wins by late KO or TKO. Next is Montana De La Rose versus Ariana Lipski, and to me, my biggest thing is I think De La Rose hasn't looked as good recently. I think Lipski's getting better and better. I know Lipski lost her last fight, but I felt like she was just fighting someone who's a bit better than her. I don't think Rose is that much better than her. I think that Rose has the better overall grappling, probably, but I don't think it's by much, as where I think Lipski has a huge advantage in the striking. I think whether they're on the feet or in the clinch or anything like that, I think Lipski will be able to tear her up a little bit. And I think that on the ground, Lipski's good enough to kind of hang with her and probably get back to her feet. And because of that, I think Lipski's going to eventually start to do a lot of damage. And I don't know if she'll finish her, but I think she's either going to win a dominant decision or get a late TKO. So I'm leaning towards Ariana Lipski. On the main card, the first fight is Tom Breeze versus Antonio Arroyo. And to me, the biggest thing with this fight is I think striking, they're pretty even. On the ground, Breeze beats him 100 times out of 10. Like, on the ground, it's not even close. I think Breeze is just the way better grappler. If Breeze does decide to just straight box with this guy, anything could happen. Because Arroyo's a really solid striker, and he has heavy shots. And he's a big guy. Like, he looks like a light heavyweight fighting at middleweight. Like I said, I don't think Breeze is going to be stupid. I think he's going to try to take this fight to the ground. I think once he does, he's going to win by either decision or submission. Like I said, I think Breeze has a huge advantage on the ground, and I think he's just going to dominate there. So I'm picking Breeze to win by, like I said, decision or submission. Next is Dusko Dodojevic versus Gregor Rodriguez. And to me, people are picking Dusko like he's automatically going to win this fight, and I'm really shocked. I think these guys are basically pretty similar. They're both striker jiu-jitsu dudes. And the biggest thing for me is people point out the Gregor's fight to get into the UFC and the Contender Series. He got knocked out, but you watched that fight all the way before the knockout, and he was dominating that fight. Like, he was owning the guy he was fighting before he got caught. And his last two fights, he's won by first-round knockout. Like, Gregor's got good striking, and he's a black belt. Like, most of his wins are by submission. His hands have just been gotten really good. As where Dusko, he's a striker jiu-jitsu dude, and to me, I think that on the ground, these guys are pretty even, and on the feet, I would honestly lean towards Gregor. I think unless Gregor gets caught with a huge shot, I think his overall striking is better. Like in his Dana White Contender Series fight, like really, if he didn't get caught, he was probably going to dominate that fight. And I think Gregor's more of a live dog than people are giving credit for, and I think he's going to win. I think, like I said, I think his jiu-jitsu is a little bit better. Dusko's probably the better wrestler, but I think the hands are either even or lean towards Gregory, in my opinion. And because of that, I'm leaning towards Gregory to win by knockout in the first or second round. Next is Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Miguel Baeza. And this is the thing. Until I see Ponzinibbio kind of get his ass kicked really badly, like 2 or 3 times in a row, I'm just going to assume that debut was just because of the layoff. I think this is way too early for Baeza. I think unless Ponzinibbio's completely done, which if he loses this fight badly, he might be. But like I said, until I see that, I'm still just going to assume that that was just his first fight back in a long time, and that's why he didn't look super amazing. Because in this fight, if he fights like normal Ponzinibbio, I think he beats the shit out of Miguel. I think that he's the better overall striker, he's the better overall grappler, and like I said, I still think Ponzinibbio should be ranked in the top 15 despite that loss. Because he was ranked like 5 or 6 before the long layoff, so I'm going to lean towards Ponzinibbio. I say he wins by knockout. But like I said, if he gets dominated in this fight, I'm going to assume he's kind of like Tony Ferguson. He's probably just done. But until I see that, I'm going to lean towards Ponzinibbio to win by decision or KO. Next is Roland Dolidze versus Leonardo Staropoli. And this is my thing. Staropoli is not... He's long and lanky, but he's a welterweight. Him fighting a middleweight is ridiculous. Especially because, to me, Roland Dolidze is like... he was fighting at light heavyweight, now he's fighting at middleweight. I think the size difference is going to be massive. And I also think the grappling advantage is going to be massive for Roman. I think that Roman, anytime he decides to take this ground, I think he'll probably get it there. And once he's on top, I think he's going to beat the crap out of Leandro. And this is what I see happening. I think the striking is going to be even, but Roman's just so much bigger and such a better grappler. It's not going to matter. I think Roman gets it to the ground eventually and just wins by TKO or submission. The co-main event, we got Walt Harris versus Marcin Tybura, and This is the biggest thing. I think this fight's going to be like Tybur's last fight against Greg Hardy. I think Walt Harris is just a better version of Greg Hardy. They fight very similarly. They both have very strong, they start very fast, and they have good striking that first round. And then they tend to slow. And if you can get out of that first round, a lot of the times guys finish them in the second and the third. And I think this is going to happen. I think Tybura is going to be a little bit slower in the beginning. He's going to try to clinch with him here and there. He's probably going to get outpointed a little bit, but I think come the second round, once Harris slows down, Tybura is eventually going to get this fight to the ground. And we've seen, just like with Greg Hardy, like Harris is probably a little bit better on the ground, but overall, once he's on his back, he really doesn't do that well against high-level grapplers. And I'm not saying Tybura is like the greatest grappler of all time, but he's good enough to where I think if he grounds Harris, he's going to TKO him with ground and pound. So that's what I see happening. I think he loses the first, comes back strong in the second, and wins by late TKO in the second. So I got Tybura. Finally, we got the main event, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Augusto Sakai. And to me, this is the biggest thing. I think the longer this goes, if it goes to decision, Sakai is going to win. I think that Rozenstruik's the better overall striker, but the fact that he doesn't throw a lot screws him in a lot of fights. I mean, he was basically going to lose to Alistair before he got lucky and caught him, and then the ref stopped it early when there was like 2 seconds left. Because really, if the ref had just let it go as Jairzinho was walking away, he would have lost because he was probably down. I mean, he lost at least 4 rounds. He might have won that round, but he still would have lost 3-2. He didn't. That round wasn't at 10-8 despite the knockdown. And then, you know, he lost to Ngannou, and he was losing to Junior until he knocked him out, and then he lost to Gon. His biggest weakness is he just doesn't throw enough, as where Sakai throws a ton. You know, people make fun of the way he looks, but Sakai has high volume, and he's stronger in the clinch. Like, that's the thing. The reason why Sakai lost to Overeem was because he got taken down and beaten up, and his grappling's not that great. Rozenstruik doesn't have that grappling. They're both just going to be kickboxing out in the open or against the fence. And if it's ever against the fence, Sakai's always going to be winning because he's better there. And this is the thing. Like I said, the longer this goes, the more I favor Sakai. But I am going to lean towards Rozenstruik. Like I said, I think he's the better striker, and I do think he'll eventually land that counter shot and win by KO. But Sakai's a live dog in this fight. In my opinion, whoever the underdog is, if you're betting on this fight, bet on that person. And it's probably Sakai, but I'm just saying, especially if this goes to decision. If this fight goes to decision, I 100% guarantee Sakai wins this fight. There's no way in my mind this fight goes to decision and Rozenstruik wins it. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.